The Volnorian Empire had been conquering worlds for almost 100 years. Their warships were massive and powerful. Their soldiers were tall, covered in hard shells like insects, and they had never lost a single war. When they wanted a planet, they took it. When they wanted slaves, they captured them. The galaxy feared the Velnorians, and the Velnorians enjoyed that fear very much. High Commander Verteth was one of their greatest warriors. He had led invasions on 12 different worlds, and each time he had won easily. He stood 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and eyes that looked like black glass. His voice was deep and cold, and when he spoke, entire civilizations trembled. So when the Velnorian Empire discovered the human colony on Kepler 442b, Verteth was given the honor of conquering it. The humans were a young species. They had only been traveling between stars for about 200 years. Their ships were small. Their weapons were basic. Their bodies were soft and weak, with no claws, no shells, no natural armor of any kind. This would be easy, Verteth thought. This would be quick. He gathered a fleet of 300 warships and traveled across the darkness of space toward the human world. When he arrived, he sent a transmission to the planet below. He wanted the humans to see him. He wanted them to understand what was coming for them. The transmission reached Fort Perseverance, the main military base on Kepler 442b. General Katie Morrison was in the command center when the message arrived. She was a woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many difficult things. Around her stood her senior officers, all watching the large screen as the alien image appeared. Verteth's face filled the screen. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke, and a translation device turned his words into English. "Creatures of Earth," he said, "I am High Commander Verteth of the Velnorian Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 60 rotations to surrender completely. If you resist, we will burn your cities to the ground. Your men will work in our mines until they die. Your women will serve us. This is not a request. This is your fate. Accept it, and some of you may live. Fight us, and you will all be destroyed." He paused, waiting for the fear to show on their faces. He had seen this moment many times before. Some species cried. Some begged. Some tried to negotiate. All of them, eventually, gave up hope. But the humans did something Verteth had never seen before. Colonel Danny Webb, a stocky man with gray at his temples, made a strange sound. It started small like a cough, but then it grew louder. His shoulders began to shake. Major Lisa Grant, standing next to him, covered her mouth with her hand, but she could not hide the smile spreading across her face. Then Captain Megan Cole started laughing. Then Lieutenant Sam Harris. Then everyone. The entire command center filled with laughter. Verteth stared at the screen, his compound eyes narrowing in confusion. This was not possible. This was not how conquered species behaved. Were these creatures insane? Did they not understand what stood before them? "You laugh?" Verteth said, his voice rising with anger. "You dare to laugh at the Velnorian Empire? Do you not understand what I am? Do you not see the fleet behind me? I have 300 warships ready to reduce your world to ash." General Morrison wiped tears from her eyes. She took a deep breath, trying to control herself, but the smile would not leave her face. She stepped forward, closer to the screen, and looked directly into Verteth's alien eyes. "Oh, we understand perfectly, Commander," she said. "We see your ships. We see your soldiers. We know exactly what you are. Then why do you laugh?" Verteth demanded. Morrison glanced back at her officers. Colonel Webb was still chuckling. Major Grant had given up trying to hide her amusement. These were soldiers who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. They were not afraid. They were excited. "We laugh," Morrison said, turning back to the screen, because we have been waiting for this. We have been out here in the galaxy for 200 years, meeting other species, trading with them, learning about them. And do you know what we discovered? We discovered that most species in this galaxy have never really had to fight for anything. Varteth's mandibles clicked rapidly. The Velnorian Empire has conquered 17 star systems. We have fought more wars than your species can count. No, Morrison said, shaking her head. You have won battles. That is not the same thing. You have always had bigger ships, more soldiers, better weapons. You have always had the advantage. You have never truly had to fight. She paused, and her smile faded slightly. Her eyes became harder, colder. We have, she said quietly. For 10,000 years, we fought each other. We killed each other in ways that would make your soldiers sick. We burned cities and poisoned lands and invented weapons that could destroy entire nations. We learned how to fight when we were outnumbered. We learned how to win when we had nothing. We learned that war is not about who has the biggest army. War is about who is willing to do whatever it takes to survive. Varteth said nothing. For the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar. It was a small feeling buried deep in his chest. He did not recognize it at first because he had never felt it before. It was doubt. You think you are predators, Morrison continued. You think you are coming to hunt us. But you are wrong, Commander. You are not the hunters here. You have just walked into the territory of the most dangerous species this galaxy has ever seen. And we do not surrender. We do not beg. We do not run. She leaned closer to the screen. We fight. And we win. And when we are done with you, the rest of the galaxy will finally understand why they should have left us alone. Varteth cut the transmission. The screen went black. In the command center. General Morrison turned to face her officers. The laughter had stopped now. Everyone was serious, focused, ready. All right, she said. They wanted a war. Let's give them one they will never forget. Colonel Webb stepped forward. Orders, General? Morrison looked at the map of the planet, at the positions of their troops, at the defenses they had been preparing for years. She thought about her grandfather, who had told her stories of old Earth wars. She thought about the history of her species, written in blood and fire and stubborn refusal to die. Contact Admiral Palmer, she said. Tell him to begin Operation Welcome. And tell our people to get ready. The Velnorians are about to learn why you never pick a fight with humans. Outside, the stars shone coldly in the black sky. Somewhere out there, 300 alien warships were preparing for what they thought would be an easy conquest. They had no idea what was coming. The Velnorian vanguard arrived exactly when they said they would. High Commander Varteth believed in precision. He believed in order. He believed that a proper military force should move like a machine, every part working perfectly together. This belief had served him well for many years. 40-7 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They appeared in a flash of blue light, their massive hulls gleaming against the black of space. Each ship was bigger than anything the humans had ever built. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a city in seconds. The flagship, called Eternal Dominion, was the largest of all. A mountain of metal and power with Varteth himself standing on its bridge. He looked out at the space before him and saw nothing. The human fleet was gone. No ships waited to challenge him. No defensive platforms floated in orbit. The planet Kepler 442b hung in the darkness, blue and green and seemingly undefended. Where are they? Asked his tactical officer, a younger Velnorian named Kethel. His mandibles clicked nervously as he studied his screens. Varteth said nothing for a long moment. He had expected some resistance. He had expected the humans to at least try to fight. This. This was disappointing. "They have fled," he finally said. "Or they are hiding on the surface, hoping we will show mercy." He made a sound that was the Velnorian equivalent of a laugh. "They will learn that the Empire shows no mercy to cowards." "Should we scan for their fleet?" Kethel asked. Vor single quotes TETH waved one of his forearms dismissively. "Why waste the effort? They have 80 ships against our 300. Even if they are hiding somewhere in the system, they pose no threat. We will deal with them later. For now, begin the invasion." He gave the order, and the vanguard began to move toward the planet. The ships spread out slightly, taking up bombardment positions. Standard procedure. Standard tactics. Everything by the book, just as the Empire had always done. The first destroyer to reach optimal range was called Sword of Conquest. It was a veteran ship, part of many successful invasions. Its captain was eager to begin the attack. To show the humans what happened to species that defied the Empire, the Sword of Conquest exploded without warning. One moment it was there. Weapons powering up, crew preparing for bombardment. The next moment, a brilliant flash of light filled the screen, and the ship was gone. Just gone. Nothing left but debris and fire. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Verteth stared in disbelief. What happened? Before anyone could answer, another explosion. Then another. 3 more destroyers vanished in blossoms of flame. "Mines!" Kethel shouted, his voice high with panic. "The orbital approach is full of mines. Thousands of them." Verteth grabbed the edge of his command console. "That is impossible. Our sensors would have detected them." "They are too small," Kethel said, his claws dancing across his controls. "They are tiny. No bigger than a Velnorian fist. But they are everywhere. There must be tens of thousands of them spread across the approach lanes." Another ship exploded. Then 2 more. The perfect formation of the vanguard was falling apart as captains tried to avoid the invisible death floating in space. Ships crashed into each other. Weapons fired wildly, trying to destroy mines they could barely see. Verteth watched his fleet being torn apart by enemies too small to fight. This was not war as he understood it. This was not honorable combat between warriors. This was something else entirely. "All ships, full stop," he commanded. "Do not advance any further until we have cleared a path." The surviving ships halted their approach. They began launching scanning drones, trying to map the minefield. But the drones kept being destroyed by the mines they were trying to find. It was like trying to count grains of sand in a storm. "How did they do this?" Verteth asked quietly. "How did they hide so many weapons in space without us knowing?" Kethel shook his head. "The mines have no power signatures when they are dormant. They only activate when a ship gets close. Our sensors are designed to find ships and stations, not tiny pieces of metal floating in the void." Verteth's mandibles clicked slowly as he thought about this. The humans had known they could not win in a direct fight, so they had not tried. Instead, they had turned space itself into a weapon. They had been patient, careful, clever. He was beginning to understand what General Morrison had meant when she said humans fought differently. "Sir," Kethel said, "we have lost 11 ships. The rest of the vanguard is holding position, but morale is shaken. The crews are afraid. Afraid of what? Pieces of metal? Afraid of what else the humans might have planned." Verteth stood very still. He thought about all the invasions he had led, all the victories he had won. Every time, the enemy had been predictable. They had fought the way civilized species fought. They had challenged the Velnorian fleet in open battle and lost, as everyone always lost. But the humans were not fighting at all. They were just waiting, watching, letting the Velnorians destroy themselves on invisible traps. "Pull back the vanguard to safe distance," Verteth ordered. Have the main fleet begin mine-clearing operations when they arrive. This will slow us down, but we will reach the planet eventually. Yes, High Commander. What about the ground invasion? Varteth thought for a moment. Send the first wave of dropships through the clearest path we can find. We will establish a foothold on the surface while the fleet deals with the mines. The humans cannot have trapped the entire planet. It was a reasonable assumption, a logical assumption. But as Varteth was starting to learn, human warfare had nothing to do with reason or logic. The dropships launched, carrying thousands of Velnorian soldiers toward the planet below. They wove through the minefield carefully, following the paths that the scanning drones had found. Some were destroyed, but most made it through. When they entered the atmosphere, the soldiers felt confident. They had survived the mines. They had reached the planet. Now they could fight a proper war, soldier against soldier, as it should be. They landed in what seemed like an empty field. The area had been identified as a good staging ground, flat and open with no obvious defenses. The soldiers poured out of the dropships, setting up equipment, preparing to advance toward the nearest human city. They did not see the hidden cameras watching them. They did not notice the small drones hovering high above, recording their positions. They did not know that 100 miles away, human artillery units were receiving targeting coordinates. The first shells began to fall. 3 minutes after the last soldier left his dropship, the explosions came from nowhere. Fire and thunder erupted across the landing zone, tearing through Velnorian ranks like a storm of death. Soldiers tried to run, tried to find cover, but there was nowhere to hide. The shells kept coming, guided by the drones overhead, adjusting their aim with every shot dot in the command center beneath Fort Perseverance. General Morrison watched the attack on her screen. "Welcome to Kepler 442b, she said quietly. "I hope you survive long enough to regret coming here." The first day of the war was over. The Velnorians had lost 11 ships and 3,000 soldiers. The humans had not lost anyone at all, but this was only the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. The year was 2347. Humanity had finally reached the stars. After 200 years of space travel, Earth received a message that changed everything. The Galactic Council, a group of 17 alien species who ruled the galaxy, invited humans to come and speak with them. Commander Daniel Price was chosen to lead this important mission. He was a calm man of 52 years who had spent his whole life preparing for moments like this. He stood on his ship, the horizon's dawn, and watched the strange colors of space pass by the windows. His team was small but skilled. Lieutenant Commander Amy Novak handled all communications. Dr. Kevin Walsh studied alien life. Maria Santos understood alien cultures. Together, they would represent all of humanity. "We are close to Covenant Station," Amy said, looking at her screen. "They gave us permission to land in the Outer Ring." Daniel frowned. The Outer Ring was far from the center of power. It was where they put visitors they did not respect. "They are not giving us a warm welcome." Kevin pushed his glasses up his nose. "Can you blame them? We are the youngest species to reach the stars in 3,000 years. To them, we are just children." Maria stepped forward and looked at the massive ring station growing larger in the window. "Children or not, we are here to show them that humanity deserves respect." The ship landed without problems. Daniel led his team through long, clean hallways. Strange aliens walked past them and stared. There were tall insect creatures called Vrix, who made clicking sounds with their mouths. There were floating creatures like jellyfish called Moravians. And there were reptile beings called Kareth, who watched them with cold, unblinking eyes. A Kareth named Overseer Thelvox met them at the end of the hallway. His scales changed colors as he spoke, and a small machine turned his hissing voice into flat English words. Commander Price, the Council will see you tomorrow. You will stay in your rooms until we call you. Thank you for having us, Daniel said carefully. We brought gifts from Earth, art, science, and ideas for working together. Thelvox blinked his inner eyelids. The Council will decide what they want. Rest now. That night, the team sat in their small rooms and talked about what they knew. The Karath controlled the military. The Moravians controlled the money. The Ricks controlled trade. Together, these three species made most of the decisions for the whole galaxy. They are scared of us, Maria said quietly. She showed them numbers on her screen. Look at how fast we grow. How quickly we learn. We did in 200 years what took them 1,000. Amy nodded slowly. I listened to their messages. They call us the plague species. They think we will spread and take over everything. Daniel lay in his bed that night and thought about these words. He had always believed that talking could solve any problem. But how do you talk to people who already hate you? The next morning, guards brought them to the council chamber. It was a huge room shaped like a bowl. Representatives from all 17 species sat in rows, looking down at a small platform in the center. Daniel walked to that platform alone. His team watched from far away. Thelvox spoke from his high seat. Humanity wants to join the Galactic Council. Commander Price, tell us why we should let you. Daniel talked for almost an hour. He spoke about humanity's journey to the stars. He talked about peace and friendship. He offered to share technology and knowledge. He promised that humans would follow all the rules and be good members of the galactic community. When he finished, the room was silent. Then the questions started. But they were not the questions Daniel expected. No one asked about trade or science or culture. Instead, they asked about weapons. How many warships did humanity have? How powerful were human guns? How many soldiers could Earth send to war? They asked about human history. They talked about the wars humans had fought against each other. They called humans violent and dangerous. They said humans could not be trusted. With each question, Daniel felt his hope getting smaller. This was not a friendly conversation. This was an attack. Finally, Thelvox raised his clawed hand. Enough. We will think about this and give our answer. 3 days passed. Daniel and his team waited in their rooms with no news. When they were finally called back to the chamber, Daniel could tell from Thelvox's body language that the answer would be bad. The council has decided, Thelvox announced. Humanity cannot join us. Also, humanity must stay where they are now. You cannot take any more planets. You cannot enter council space. If you break these rules, we will see it as an attack. This decision cannot be changed. Daniel stood frozen. This was worse than rejection. They were building a prison around humanity. Overseer, he said, keeping his voice steady, this is not fair. We have done nothing wrong. We came here offering peace. The decision cannot be changed, Thelvox repeated. Go home and tell your leaders. Humanity will obey, or humanity will suffer. Something cold grew in Daniel's chest. He had believed his whole life that talking could fix anything. But looking up at those 17 species, seeing the fear and hate in their alien eyes, he understood something terrible. They had never planned to give humanity a chance. This meeting was just for show. They had already decided to cage humanity like dangerous animals. I will take your message home, Daniel said quietly. But I want the council to understand something. Humanity came here with open hands and honest hearts. We wanted peace. We wanted friendship. Whatever happens after this, remember that we tried. We really tried. He turned and walked out. His team followed him in silence. In the hallway, Amy grabbed his arm. What did you mean by whatever happens next? Daniel kept walking, his face hard as stone. I meant what I said. They made their choice. Now humanity will have to make ours. The Horizon's Dawn left Covenant Station and began the long journey home. Daniel stood at the window and watched the stars pass by. He thought about his mission. He thought about all his hopes for peace. And he thought about what humanity might have to do now that peace was no longer possible. The Council believed they had solved the human problem. They believed that they had put the young species in its place. They believed their power would keep humanity quiet and small forever. They were very, very wrong. 6 months passed after the Council's decision. On Earth, leaders argued about what to do. Some wanted to ignore the rules and expand anyway. Others said humanity should wait and keep trying to talk. In the end, they chose to try one more time. Daniel Price volunteered to go back. Many people thought he was crazy. The Council had treated him badly and rejected everything he believed in. But Daniel still had hope. He still believed that somewhere in the Council, there were reasonable people who might listen. This time, he brought only one person with him. Lieutenant Commander Amy Novak came as his communications officer. They traveled in a small ship with no weapons, following every rule perfectly. They sent messages on every channel saying they came in peace. The Council agreed to meet them, but not in the big chamber. Instead, Daniel would talk to a small group who would then tell the full Council what they thought. "It is something," Daniel told Amy as their ship landed. "It is a chance." The small group had 5 members. 2 Karath, 1 Moravian, 1 Vrix, and a small furry creature from a species called the Talani. They met in a plain room with no windows, far from the grand halls of power. Daniel made his argument again. He talked about fairness. He said humanity was being punished for things they had not done. He said the rules were based on fear, not facts. The Council members listened without speaking. When Daniel finished, the senior Kareth, a female named Valkyra, spoke. "Commander Price, you talk about fairness. But fairness must serve the whole galaxy, not just one species. Your history shows what humans can do. You fought wars against your own kind. You destroyed your own planet's nature. Why should we believe you have changed?" "Because we have changed," Daniel said. "The same people who once made war have now united under one government. We work together. We protect our world. We can do the same for the galaxy. Can you?" Valkyra's eyes narrowed. "Or have you simply run out of enemies at home and now want to find new ones among the stars?" The argument went on for hours. Nothing Daniel said seemed to matter. The Council members had already made up their minds. But Daniel kept trying, because giving up meant accepting that humanity would be prisoners forever. Then the Talani representative, a soft-spoken male named Keth, raised his small hand. "Maybe we can find a middle way. What if humanity accepted Watchers? Council observers in your space who can see that you are not building weapons or planning attacks. If you have nothing to hide, this should be acceptable." Daniel paused. He knew Earth would not like having aliens watching everything they did. But maybe this was the only door that would open. "I would need to ask my government," he said carefully. "But I am willing to bring this idea to them." Valkyra made an angry sound. "There will be no discussion. The Council does not negotiate with lower species." "Then why are we here?" Daniel asked, his patience finally breaking. "Why have this meeting if you never plan to listen?" The room went quiet. Valkyra stood slowly from her seat. Her scales changed to colors that Daniel's translator could not explain. "You are here because the Council wanted to test you, to see if humanity could accept its place in the natural order. You have shown that you cannot." She waved her hand at the guards standing by the door. They were Kara soldiers in heavy armor. "What is happening?" Amy demanded, moving closer to Daniel. "Commander Price," Valkyra continued, "you are charged with trying to start a rebellion against the Galactic Council. The punishment is death. This is madness." Daniel shouted. "I came here with diplomatic protection. I have done nothing but speak for my people. Your people are a disease," Valkyra spat, "and you are a symptom. The Council will show the galaxy what happens to species that do not know their place." The guards moved forward. Daniel saw Amy reaching for the small weapon at her side, but he grabbed her arm. "Do not fight them. Get back to the ship. Get back to Earth. I will not leave you. That is an order." He looked into her eyes, willing her to understand. Someone has to tell them what happened here. Someone has to warn them. The guards grabbed Daniel. He did not fight. He watched as two soldiers pushed Amy toward the hallway. Her screams echoed off the walls as they dragged her away. The last thing Daniel saw before they took him was Keth. The Talani, looking down at his hands with what might have been shame. They did not give Daniel a trial. They did not let him speak dot in the main plaza of Covenant Station. In front of representatives from all 17 species, Commander Daniel Price was killed by Kara soldiers. His body was left in the plaza for 6 hours before they burned it. The message was clear. Humanity had no rights. Humanity had no protection. The Council could do whatever it wanted, and there was nothing Earth could do about it. At least, that is what the Council believed. Lieutenant Commander Amy Novak escaped Covenant Station in their small ship. She flew without stopping for 3 days, pushing the engines past their limits. She sent coded messages ahead to warn Earth what was coming. When she finally landed in Geneva, she could barely stand. She had not slept or eaten properly since leaving the station, but she delivered her message. She told them everything. The fake hearing, the false charges, the murder of an innocent man who had only wanted peace. President Laura Bishop received the news in a dark room surrounded by her advisors. She listened to Amy's report without any expression on her face. When Amy finished, the president spoke one word: protocol? General Marcus Cole, the highest military officer on Earth, stepped forward. His voice was heavy with the weight of what he was about to say. Annihilation protocol was made for exactly this situation, Madam President. A complete, overwhelming response to a threat against our survival. We have planned it for decades, but we never thought we would actually need it. They murdered our envoy, the president said quietly. A man who went to them with nothing but hope and good intentions. They murdered him to send us a message. She looked up, and her eyes were cold as ice. Now we send ours. She stood up and straightened her jacket. Start annihilation protocol. Right now. The order went out across Earth, to every military base, every hidden facility, every secret project that the public had never known about. Ships that had been sleeping in darkness began to wake up. Weapons that had been kept secret for generations were brought into the light. The Council had made a terrible mistake. They had thought humanity was weak. They had thought humans would accept their cage quietly. They were about to learn how wrong they were. High Commander Vexter made his last stand on the Cathari throne world. He had gathered every ship that remained, every soldier who could still fight, every weapon that still worked. The planet's defense grid was the most powerful in the known galaxy. He was certain it would hold. It fell in 4 days. On the 5th day, human ground forces entered the capital city. They moved through the streets in careful formations, securing buildings, arresting soldiers, and setting up medical tents for wounded civilians. Cathari citizens watched in amazement as the invaders who had destroyed their military now handed out food and water to their children. Vexter was found alone in his throne room. His guards had run away or surrendered. His advisors had scattered like frightened animals. The mighty warrior who had mocked human weakness stood by himself, holding his plasma blade, waiting for a glorious final battle. 3 humans entered the room. One was old Admiral Hayes, walking slowly but standing straight. One was Captain Nick Torres, whose sister had died on New Montana. And one was Margaret Cole, the former governor of New Montana, who had been rescued from a Cathari slave camp 2 weeks earlier. Margaret was thin now. Her hair had turned completely white. Her eyes held a deep sadness that would never fully go away. But she was alive, and she had asked to be here for this moment. "I, Commander Vexter," Hayes said formally. "You are under arrest for crimes against humanity. You will be tried before judges from across the Galactic Concord." Vexter stared at them in disbelief. "A trial? You will not execute me? You will not torture me for what I did?" "No. Why not?" His voice cracked with confusion. "After everything? I murdered your people. I laughed while they died. I would have enslaved your entire species if I could." Margaret Cole stepped forward. She had to look up to meet his eyes, but there was no fear in her face. Only a quiet, terrible calm. "Because that is the difference between us," she said. "You showed us your worst. You showed us everything horrible and cruel that you could be. And we chose not to become it." She paused. "You will spend the rest of your life in a prison cell. You will watch as we rebuild everything you destroyed. You will see your own people, learn that there is another way to live. You will grow old knowing that your entire legacy was a failure. That is not mercy, High Commander. That is justice. And it is far worse than anything you imagined." Vexter dropped his blade. His clawed hands were shaking. For the first time in his life, he truly understood fear. Human soldiers took him away in chains. In the months that followed, the Cathari Dominion was officially dissolved. Its military was disbanded. Its leaders faced trials for their crimes. But the ordinary people, the citizens who had simply been born into a culture of conquest, were not punished. Instead, human ships arrived carrying food, medicine, and teachers taught the same species that has shattered the most powerful military in the galaxy now organized schools on conquered worlds. They built hospitals. They set up food distribution centers. They did exactly what they had always done, except now they were doing it for the people who had attacked them. The galaxy watched in astonishment. Ambassador Threlvok, who had once questioned human softness, now stood on the deck of a human relief ship orbiting a Cathari colony world. Beside him was Lisa Howard, now Admiral Howard, commanding the peacekeeping forces in the sector. "I understand now," Threlvok said quietly, "why you always warned everyone." Lisa nodded. She looked older than she had 2 years ago. The war had changed her, as it had changed all humans. But her eyes were still kind. "We knew what we were capable of," she said. "We had lived through it. Our history is filled with terrible wars, horrible weapons, suffering on scales that most species cannot imagine. We spent centuries trying to become better, kinder, more peaceful. And we did become those things, mostly." She looked out at the stars, but the capacity for violence never went away. It could not. It is part of what we are, written into our blood and bones. We carry our ancestors' fury inside us, sleeping but never truly gone. So when you warned us not to make you angry, we meant it literally. We were not afraid that other species would hurt us. We were afraid of what we would do if someone pushed us hard enough to stop choosing peace. Threlvok's antennae trembled. "And now? After all of this, will you go back to being the gentle giants we knew?" Lisa watched the Cathari children playing in the streets below, supervised by human volunteers who were teaching them games from Earth. Some of those volunteers had lost family members on New Montana. They were playing with the children of the species that had murdered their loved ones. "We will try," she said. "Every single day we will try. We will wake up and choose kindness. We will choose mercy. We will choose to build instead of destroy. And we will hope that we never have to show that other side of ourselves again." She paused. "But we will remember how. just in case someone else forgets the lesson the Kithari learned. The war had lasted less than a year, but its effects would last forever. In the decades that followed, stories about the human war spread to every corner of the galaxy. Different species told the tale in different ways, but the core message was always the same. The humans were kind. They were generous. They would give you the clothes off their backs and the food from their tables. They would heal your sick and teach your children and welcome you as friends without asking for anything in return. But they were also the species that had nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times before they reached the stars. They carried inside them a capacity for destruction that terrified even their own historians. They had nuclear weapons and bioweapons and things even worse, all invented during wars against themselves. They had learned to control this darkness. They had chosen to be gentle, but the darkness was still there, sleeping beneath the surface, waiting. Do not wake it up. Every diplomat who dealt with humans learned this warning. Every military commander who considered challenging them heard these stories. Every child in the galaxy grew up knowing that there was one species you did not threaten, one species you did not provoke, one species whose kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. And when new species emerged and asked why everyone was so careful around the friendly, helpful humans, the older species would tell them the story. They would tell them about New Montana and the war that followed. They would tell them about fleets that burned and fortresses that fell, and a military empire that was dismantled in less than a year. They would tell them about human soldiers who destroyed their enemies completely and then stayed to rebuild what they had broken. And they would end with the same words every time. The humans warned everyone. They said it over and over again to anyone who would listen. They begged us to believe them. Do not make us mad. Now the universe understood why. And the universe would never forget.